Double P Podcast proudly presents
Z, the first podcast after you watch
Y the Last Man. Today we're breaking down episode 2 of season 1, Would the World Be Kind? After a mass casualty event wipes out every creature with a Y chromosome, President Jennifer Brown responds to this crisis. Her son Yorick fears he may be the only male survivor. Hero attempts to right a wrong. Catfish. We're 2 episodes into this show we waited so long for. We read those comic books 20 years ago. How long ago was it? 18, 19? How many years ago was it?
about 17 years ago. That's when they started, 17 years ago.
Incredible. The show's finally here. We're on the 2nd episode. What is your rating out of 10 for episode 2?
I'm going to give it 6, what I thought were double S's.
Double S's?
Yeah, saved sperm banks. But then I realized that wasn't right. It was actually 6 double S's.
Oh, okay. Wait, what?
Yeah, sorry, Snickers. You know, when you're discovered naked and wet in a laundromat, you apologize with what I like to call a sorry Snicker.
Oh, man. Well, he got some double P's in return.
Double P's?
Peace pants. He's going to peace out now that he has pants.
You know, we were just talking about the first episode. We're like, okay, great. Let's see this world kind of fall apart.
Mm-hmm.
And strangely, I thought this episode both slowed things down too much and jumped forward too fast. We went from day 1 to day 8 in a heartbeat. We found out we needed some more women in positions of authority, especially at Omaha. Hello, Omaha. Are you there? And then we're still in day 8. It sort of gets casually alluded to that Diane Lane is the president. And then we skipped over a bunch of stuff. We're in day 63. You know, there's no kind of explanation for, even though we're covering some things in detail, there's no explanation for, like, trade Yorick. One of the women who get face off with him in the laundromat says that she wants to trade for him.
Right.
So there's a lot of stuff going on. I mean, it would be cool to sort of drop things in very subtly, but on the other hand, we're spending a lot of time doing stuff that I don't know why we're there. And so I was a little frustrated with this. The only thing that really grabbed me in this episode was trying to figure out whether Yorick in the subway was crying for Beth or Ampersand. He was thinking about both of them. Ampersand came back. I got a clue for you. Last episode, you were like, well, he's still got a shot with Beth. No, he's a stalker at this point. She's not coming back no matter how many times he spray paints, Beth, I hear you calling, on every building in soon-to-be-flooded New York City. So that was mine. I gave it a 6. A little down on this episode. Now, what about you, Bubba?
Catfish, I'm going the exact opposite way.
Oh.
You went down from a 7 to a 6. I'm
did.
going up to this episode. I'm giving it 8, what I like to call double D's out of 10.
Oh, yeah. Double D's?
Dry cleaning danger. That's when you don't bring the ticket back and they don't remember your number and you just want some clothes. We've all been in that dry cleaning danger before. This episode was tense. That's what I liked about the last 10 minutes of the first episode. And while it didn't reach that high, that tense of everybody dying at once that the first episode had, there were a lot of tense scenes and I liked it. What I feel this show is very odd in that this is a global pandemic, a mass extinction-level event around the world. And yet the show feels small. It feels intimate. We're seeing personal stories rather than the larger picture. And I understand how that could be frustrating. And I'm with you that the jumps that it's asking the audience to make, like, hey, okay, it's day 63. You're right. The audience does have to piece together, ooh, we could trade him. Well, oh, it's gotten that bad? It's that big a thing? It would have been fun to see us get to that point. I totally agree. But there were a lot of tense scenes, a lot of scenes that I enjoyed. Last week, I felt some of the scenes that I even enjoyed. I thought, well, for example, the president's about to die. This probably will be irrelevant. I thought this episode had important, relevant scenes, and it asked some questions that I think you and I will have a great time debating. The scenes are still, there isn't much music. There isn't much of a score to this show, which I find a bit weird. If you're a fan of the comic series like we are, the fact that this is very much an ensemble and Yorick is just one of the cast. doesn't even really feel like he's the main focus of the show, especially in this episode.
Absolutely.
But you say absolutely and good, but I think that might actually be a weakness and part of a lack of focus, which maybe is why you're questioning this show. But once again, I bumped my score up to 8 out of 10, really positive. Listeners, we always say, who cares what we think? We want to know what you think. Reach out to us on our social media platform. We're Double P Media. You can reach us at Double PHQ. That's the word double, the single letter P for podcast, letters HQ for headquarters, at Double PHQ, Twitter and Instagram, Facebook.com/Double PHQ. If you're on YouTube, we need you to subscribe, follow, and tickle that like button. Give it a click.
So dirty. It's pornographic, really.
We need it. It really helps us find other survivors of the mass extinction event to hop on and join this journey with us.
The thing that I'm going to be really curious about going into episode 3, and this just has to do with our ratings, is I really felt, you were the one who was like, I love the last 10 minutes of the first episode. And I really didn't put it together like that, but once you said it, it made a lot of sense to me. And I felt the same way about this one. So I wonder if they're going to do that. If they do that same thing in the third episode, I'm going to start to get concerned. Where we putz around and then there's like some big something.
Yeah, a big change. Storyline kind of reaches an apex or changes or a crisis moment. A lot of shows do it. A lot of shows have done it successfully. You do want to leave on that change, that crisis point, that apex. Not necessarily a cliffhanger, but like, oh my goodness, what we thought was, we thought we were headed down track A and now we're going down track B. It'll be really interesting. You're right. If the show stays this way. Guys, we're going to talk about all the fun developments in this episode. We're also going to have our friend and musical expert, Double M Matt Murdick, who you can find at Musical Concepts on Twitter. He's going to be here to do a musical analysis of the Why the Last Man theme song. Oh, that I
hope he's not. Oh, yeah, it's only the theme song. I hope he's not getting full pay for this since there's not a lot of music in this show.
It's like a vacation for him for such little music. Plus, we're going to play our games where we award, what do we award, Catfish? For every podcast, we award
our Whoa Man of the Week.
Oh, yeah.
And that is the most awesome woman of the week. There's also our Yorick. I knew him, sort of.
Right.
Ways in which we are like or not like Yorick from this episode. And then we have our Suspect of the Week. Why do we think this happened? Who did it?
Why are all the men gone? Is this just an act? Is this like set around April Fool's Day at all? No, we're obviously silly. This is a show that can ask big questions, have big ideas, touches on very controversial or very important points, I should say, out there in the discourse. And yet we're a lighthearted, fun podcast. Hopefully you will join us on this journey. Catfish, are you ready to dive into this episode?
Let's do it. Splash.
Last week, you said the character that you found the most interesting was Sarah, or as we learned today, we can refer to her as Agent 355, Agent 355. This episode, it starts immediately where the last one ended on the day that the incident happens. She has almost a bit of a panic attack. I'm not sure if that's the correct definition, but she was affected like anybody else would be. On day 8, she goes to what we assume is kind of like a regional office for her top secret agents. She goes to a post office box, her box 355. She turns the key, and it allows her access to a secret room. That room still has power. She's able to call out to others, and nobody answers. There's a personal box she pulls out. I assume it's personal. It has certain items in there, like a knitting needle, something that looks somewhat like a snow globe, and a necklace, which she puts on. There's also an envelope labeled, quote, "not yet," on the front of the envelope. She opens it up. It's a note with an address in there. Turns out she's once again a member of a covert task force, the Culper Ring. She's tasked with finding the president's daughter, Hero, but she comes back after she's found Yorick. Why the Last Man? Did you like this storyline, Catfish? What intrigued you about it or frustrated you about Agent 355 this week?
She still continues to be my most favorite character. She's got a lot of interesting stuff going on. I don't want to say she's like three-dimensional, but like you said, she's a badass. And this is the only kind of mystery that they have introduced to the show so far. As I was talking about in our first episode, there were a lot of mysteries in the comic book as far as like why this started. This is the only one that they developed so far, and they're doing a great job with it. I mean, I don't think we'll find out the answer to what the threat was, but I'm just fascinated by her, like her backstory already more fully fleshed out than it was in the comics, and I think they're doing a great job with Agent 355 and R.I.P. Agent 1133 or whatever his name was.
I thought you were going to say R.I.P. Agents 1 through 354.
No, he was the Agent 1137. Stinky. 8 days. I mean, we go back. She visits him 8 days later. Hero goes back to visit the dude. This is after they've said it's day 63.
Yep.
So, woof.
Man, it's cold outside. Some of these bodies haven't been preserved too well. You need to once again get across that this person can take, kick ass and take names. And it wasn't so much that she's kicking ass in this episode, but she does have to go up to what you assume is National Guard or Army helicopter pilots and say, yeah, I know what you've been told. No, now you're doing this. Now you're taking me in. The change of plans, this is how it's going to happen. And she has to have that authority and that strength, and she gets it across great. And, of course, that makes it fun, I find, when the early scene pitted her up against a president who, as we have seen in the first episode and in this episode, is almost as hard-headed is the wrong word, but is almost as, strong and determined as she is. And I think that's a good pairing. I don't know if we'll see more scenes of them together as the show goes on, but I thought that was a good moment to show and teach us about Agent 355, who, despite this strength, and probably she has a lot of knowledge, she does have to defer to the chain of command. And in this case, the chain of command was President Brown, has the final word on everything.
Well, it's true, but also interesting. At that point, you could pretty come up with any story, right? I mean, Agent 355's story is quite out there, and there's no one to contradict her, so she could have said anything. There was a unicorn sighting on the White House lawn.
Yeah, R.I.P. White House, apparently. What did you feel about that? Let's go to President Brown and the situation she's dealing with. This is the stuff that maybe it hits too close to home after 2020 and 2021, but the mob scene at the White House, possibly burning it down, I think that's fascinating. I wish we could have seen some of that. Maybe the show has it has a big budget, but it's like burning down a fake White House. That might be a bit tricky.
Here's my problem, though, and this is my problem that I expressed earlier. Why? You're right, we're getting these intimate stories, but we don't have an idea of what's going on in the world around them. And without an idea of why we can guess why these people are attacking the White House. Why can't we get their motivations? Without understanding what's going on in the larger world, it feels like they're not going to really develop things. And I'm so confused why they're not doing that. It's not helping me here to understand. We jump forward 60 days. People are doing this. People are doing that. Why?
Well, Catfish, I hear what you're saying. And if any listeners, if you feel like Catfish, let me say, I think I should try to inspire us.
Get help. Oh, no, boy.
Which I thought was a brilliant line, a bit of self-reflection. As the president, I think I should try to inspire us. I love it. Yes, we have this militia taking over the Arizona State House. And you're saying you would have liked to have seen it built to this, kind of the reasons why these people are pretty much going militaristic and mob mentality. But once again, it could be, Catfish, let me finish. It could be that because I've seen so much mob mentality sadly, in our real world, like the January 6th insurrection event at the White House, that I almost just took it for granted. Of course, anything goes crazy. People are going to suspect it's the government. Boy, isn't there always a cult that the government's trying to fluoridate our water supply. I didn't have that issue is what I'm trying to say. If you did, I understand.
Okay.
But for me, I kind of could roll with it. And I loved that we were hearing about it. Once again, I would have loved to have seen some of these things, but I was okay with it.
Just think of it this way. Presumably, all the people that we are aware of are going to be influenced by outside forces.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm getting no sense of those outside forces, groups, etc. Yeah, that's all.
Okay. President Brown is in a tricky situation, and let's talk about it. First, she's got
abuse of power. Maybe that's why they're storming the White House. She's abusing her power to find one person. And, it's not a secret. Just about everybody in the episode who talks to her says, aren't you wasting resources trying to find your daughter?
Well, Catfish, let's get to it.
Everybody knows about it.
Let's get to the first thing to debate. Let's talk about it. Is that an abuse of power? Now, we know, because we saw the setup, her moving up the New York City evacuation really had nothing to do with her daughter, Hero. It was because of those concerns that the people had. But other people read it as, hey, you are wasting resources to get your daughter. And in one specific instance, specific Agent 355's mission, there is no point. You would think if you have somebody who is on a top secret task force, finding the president's daughter is, in this scenario we're watching, it isn't important. It is a personal choice and possibly wasting a resource. What do you think?
Yeah, I completely agree. What is funny is the way you set it up is that we heard about 12 different times that she was wasting resources on her daughter. And then after she got all the criticism for that, maybe she just thought, well, if I'm going to do the time, I might as well do the crime.
I'm going to vote for her. That's kind of logic we need in the White House.
For impeachment?
Or the burnt down White House in the command center.
All right.
Now, I'm going to jump a bit to another political situation. So the president's daughter, the former president's daughter, Amber Tamblyn's character, Kimberly, is still getting dressed up. I think this is a nice note. Her mom, is drinking, trying to catch flies with a cup, I believe we saw. Her mom isn't getting dressed up, but she's getting dressed up. She's trying to look like, hey, I'm, still somebody important. She even says to President Brown, she's like, my father used to consider me a sounding board and this kind of stuff. And she is very concerned about a cryobank, we assume a sperm bank in New York City, that isn't being protected. But President Brown is like, we'll worry about that when we worry about it. We got people who are in danger now. In this scenario,
she's also saying we've got some other sperm banks secured, but I don't think that's the sperm bank that AT is looking for.
You mean Kimberly is? Sure, okay.
Yes.
Well, who's right? Let's have the debate. Who's right? Should every sperm bank be protected? You do need sperm to continue the species. Well, what do you think?
Well, you do, but if you have a wide variety, I think you'll be okay. To me, I agreed with the President Brown on this. It's like, forget the art. We need to save the people. Mm-hmm. And I know that for some people, sperm already are people. But for me, I think you should spend your resources trying to save people. Obviously, again, if sperm banks are important, but as long as you have enough, you're good to go. So for me, that's my feeling. What do you feel about that?
I think it's a delicate balance. Now, once again, we're not given all the information. President Brown says, hey, we have some. This is hundreds of millions of people who are dead that you would want in some way to be able to, continue on as a species. That's seemingly why we do half the things we do, is because it's in our DNA. We want to continue on. We want to keep the line going. We want to breed because it's like, once again, we've evolved to this point. And so I guess I see Kimberly, presidential daughter Kimberly's thought process, but you put a gun to my head as the situation feels like, I would agree with the president as well. But I love that the show is kind of debating these issues and has us thinking about these already in episode 2.
I have to say, part of that scene involving Kimberly very much disoriented me in this episode. There were certain times I was untethered as to what the timing was, especially because we saw Agent 355 in that one location, and then she was back in the White House in the next thing. So Kimberly, we're in what's essentially the Situation Room, and people look like they're a mess. They look like They only had one pair of clothes, two pairs of clothes. They haven't, maybe not showering enough, whatever. And then Kimberly comes out of her room, and it's like a really nice hallway, and the kids look clean, and they're running around. And I thought, like, is this the before times?
Oh, I didn't think that. I mean, the way her mom was acting certainly, to me, gave away. Okay, this is in the show's present timeline. And I also,
right, I just, they're not doing a good enough job, I think, of like setting up exactly what the circumstances are. Like, it looks a lot more desperate in the command center than it does in the hallways.
I thought it was an interesting moment that the show gave when Kimberly is walking out. Remember, she's the author of the best-selling book Boy Mom. Mm-hmm. And she sees all those little girls playing. And are we led to believe, I can't remember from episode 1 or if it showed it or not, but did Kimberly only have sons? Like, she didn't have a daughter, I wonder.
I think she only had sons, and neither of them had their shoes on.
Oh, boy.
And now they don't have heads.
R.I.P. Kimberly's kids. Okay, that's pretty tough. I want to stay here with the politics for a bit, Catfish. And the one thing that I agree with you, we really didn't see the mob mentality, why the mob developed and all this stuff. But once again, I guess I could roll with it. But I also thought that this moment at the end, we talked about this character on our last podcast, Nora Brady, who was the former president's press secretary. Ooh. And she is trying to get into this command center, into the new government, headquarters, for lack of a better word.
Man, I've been there. If you're not on the list, you are not on the list.
And she is turned away. And I have a feeling she is not going to be none too happy about this. And she might learn how to fire a gun really darn good. I think we may be seeing the person who could lead us into the mob mentality. Do you remember,
I like that.
Is Nora Brady a character from the comic?
There is, I believe that character was called Nora, but it did not with this kind of background, no.
Okay.
But, yeah.
Yeah, I thought, once again, it was just one scene. For me, it was tantalizing to, this is how we started with these kind of base characters, and how we're going to branch out and see the world is if these characters branch out and show us what's happening. Once again, it was just one little scene with the anger in her eyes and her voice when she was turned away. I loved it. I was like, hell yeah. Let's stir this stuff up. One final bit of politics that I think we should talk about is the former First Lady who is totally getting drunk and tells an interesting story about when she was pregnant with Kimberly, how her hairdresser said, oh, you're definitely going to have a girl because women steal their beauty from the mother's beauty. And as someone who's not a daughter and never, could be a mom.
Are you sure? Okay.
Well, let's assume. Let's put a caveat on that. But as someone, I am not a mother. I'm not a daughter. I never could be, never would be. I thought this was very interesting conversation. What did you take from it, if anything, other than the old former First Lady is getting lit?
What I like about her, and maybe this is wrong because I'm asking for more, but clearly everybody has an agenda, and I just like the idea of I like seeing someone who probably would be as broken as I was at this point, just to see somebody, how it affecting somebody different, not angry, just sort of resignation. And, she's like, I only get a shower every other day. I'll take one every third day. Just make it up to me in booze.
Good. Yeah, maybe we should vote for her. I'll vote for her. Well, okay, Catfish. We've talked about the politics. We talked about Agent 355. Where do you want to go next?
All right, well, let's talk about the second most interesting character on the show. Well, not the second most interesting character left, Yorick.
Well, I thought you were going to say the second most interesting character on the show, the dry cleaning grandma.
Oh, my God. The dry cleaning women were the best.
They were great. I thought that was a really great, fun scene. So, Catfish, before we get to Yorick, and we'll get to him, I want to know, what are your thoughts on Ampersand? I listened to a interview, with a showrunner, Eliza Clark, and there was actually a big debate if they were going to use an actual live monkey, like the monkey that was on the TV show Friends, or they were going to use a CGI monkey. Monkey's name is Ampersand, and he's in the show an awful lot. We started podcasting about Game of Thrones, which could, in a season of 10 episodes, could barely have one shot or two shots of digital direwolves. Here we are. We have a fully realized digital monkey that's appearing in this show an awful lot. What are your thoughts on the CGI and Ampersand in general?
Maybe it's because I've been watching it on my computer, but consider me surprised to hear that the monkey was CGI. So I'm going to have to say in that case that it's some very good CGI. I really did not realize that it was not a real monkey.
Catfish, you'll love this. So I don't know if it was a PETA or some animal organization. They watch all these productions and they were going to say, okay, we can sign off on the horse that like appeared in the first episode and this other animal, this dog. But we can't sign off on the monkey. We didn't see the scenes you filmed with it. And they had to tell the group, that's a digital monkey. There weren't any scenes you would have seen. And they were blown away. In the showrunner in this interview, she said she was so worried because she didn't want it to look fake. She didn't want it to look fake. And the CG team was telling her, it'll work, it'll work, it'll work. I'm with you. I think this really looks pretty good.
I'm glad I'm not the only one that was duped. Jeez. So Yorick, I said the good thing that they changed in the TV show from the comic was in the comic, Yorick is all the time talking about he wants to go see Beth. He wants to go see Beth. And I thought they were going to take care of that by having her break up with him. But he's got, during the coronavirus, a lot of court cases have slowed down. Courts haven't been in session, stuff like that. Right. So I imagine that it's going to take a while for her restraining order to get served. But I would say the court should make that a priority when they get back up because he is, it's over, bro. It's over. I don't know. You know what they need, though? The person who had the list at the White House who told Nora she couldn't come in, she needs to have a talk with Yorick. Sorry, bro. You're not on Beth's list.
Let me say, in Yorick's defense, there's no defense. No, I'm kidding. But let me say that the one thing I can say, and hopefully nobody else knows heartbreak, but I think just because you've had your heart broken doesn't mean you automatically stop being in love with the person that broke your heart, right? This kind of love is a strong emotion. Yorick, 63 days later, he is, I would call it obsessed. He is wasting precious phone battery to watch these old videos of Beth. And he's also afraid to go outside. We haven't seen maybe why, but he's not going outside. He says to the people in the dry cleaner, he says, I haven't talked to anybody else. I just want to go home. He's broken. And maybe it's not just from the terrible event, but also from the heartbreak.
Yeah, I can see that. That's another thing that sort of came up. I'll say it for the last time. I would have been completely happy if this first season ended on day 63.
Yeah.
But here we are at day 63 already. So, yeah, it's a lot has happened to him.
Okay, so now let's get your answer to the question. He's down in the flooded subway, and he is broken. He is just emotionally broken. He's emotionally drained. Was he crying because he missed Ampersand, or was he crying because he no longer was with Beth?
Well, from the joy that he expressed when he found Ampersand, I'm going to say Ampersand.
Aw. Pets give unconditional love. We love it. So let's talk about this scene in the dry cleaner. I'm almost positive there's no such scene in the graphic novel, in the comic series. And that was a great...
No, although there is a lot of talk of a couple times when he gets caught, people talk about trading him.
Right, but I thought that was a great tense scene. And to make him naked, make him that much more vulnerable... I thought that was a great moment. I thought that was a great scene. That's one of the reasons why I bumped my rating up to 8 out of 10. What did you think, Catfish? Should they have traded him? Is Yorick worth a Halloween fun-size Snickers?
Well, I don't know why they should have. Since I had no idea what a man is, what the market value of a man is, and what people want for him. I don't know, but I did think that was a really good scene. Before that, it's funny, very interesting. The because it's New York, there's a tank going through New York, telling people you got to get out, doing it in different languages. One of them Russian, so it was kind of a funny callback, like it almost seemed like a Russian tank driving through New York City. That part was funny.
It's Red Dawn too.
Yeah, Red Dawn too. New York Boogaloo.
Well, let's then stick with Yorick. He goes to his sister. No, he goes to his sister Hero's place. He kind of collapses. Agent 355 takes him down. R.I.P. guitar. And then he's brought to his mother, who is now president. That is a great end moment on the show. I loved that the two helicopter pilots are kind of hanging back a bit, like, what is going on? People like him are all dead. And so I thought it was great. I thought that was a great ending, and it is pushing me to watch episode 3.
Well, I agree. Again, they do all the interesting stuff right at the end to sucker you into coming back, but also those pilots didn't see him before. He was covered up. Only now they're realizing he's a man. I mean, if they covered him up when he was going into the helicopter, they should have covered him up coming out. That is a secret that should have stayed.
Right, but also the fact that he's getting hugged by the president, and if they know he's the president's son, and the president, all the men are dead, but the president has a son who's still alive. I mean, this is conspiracy corner. Let's get a...
You could trade him for 2 Snickers.
Oh, man. They really satisfy you. All right, it's time to finish up the Brown family with daughter and sister Hero, who is at a FEMA location. It is, to me, it's, a really powerful image. We've seen so many things. Sadly, we've all lived through so many tragedies that we've seen, kind of relocation centers like this. They're identifying the dead by driver's license. Oh, my God, how painful. Who does she run into? It is a ridiculous coincidence, but she runs into the wife and child of her murder victim.
Now, I think you're missing something here, Bubba, because the wife says, you're always here when I'm here. So if it was a coincidence at one point, it's no longer a coincidence. She is clearly feeling guilty. I don't know why the guy would have died eventually, but...
he would have died it feels like a couple hours later.
Yeah, a couple hours later. He died doing what he loved, sleeping around on his wife and attacking his girlfriend.
No R.I.P. for him. Good riddance.
No, exactly. Good riddance. So she's clearly got some guilt. The reason why I noticed that dialogue, because it felt a little clunky when she said, "You're always here when I'm here." I would just assume if I go somewhere and someone's there whenever I'm there, it's not that they're there when I'm there, it's that they're always there. Right. So it's weird to say you always show up at the same time as I do. So she's kind of tracking her a little bit, and obviously, she is debating whether to give this woman her relief.
Right. And in the end, she does what I feel like is definitely the right thing. She needed to do it. Admittedly, the woman by this point should have known, if all men are dead, you should assume, your husband passed away. And if you can't locate the body, I know that's incredibly painful. I know that's incredibly sad. I know the not having confirmation must have been driving her crazy.
Right.
But, I think, she probably knew what was going on. I loved that moment when she gets the driver's license and she realizes, oh, wait a minute, you must have been the infamous other woman. And she thanks her and says, she thanks her because Hero is proving I wasn't crazy. I thought that was a great moment. I thought that was a great twist on what an audience expectation might be. I loved it.
Yeah, no, I think that will really key in with women because a lot of times people try to gaslight women, and I think she's probably more comforted realizing she was right about that her husband was fooling around with her than she's right that he's dead.
Man, oh man. And we also need to talk about Hero's good friend Sam. Now, Sam is pissed because he was going to go with a group of, I assume, his friends who were going to go up. Where were they going? To Vermont. They were going out, kind of going north and also kind of going away from the city to pile up with somebody's mother. And Sam is a good friend, so he hangs back to wait for Hero. But he's also pissed that he has, one, I don't even know how to describe it, enough testosterone to last 2 weeks. And I thought it was very powerful. I am not, I'm not an expert on the kind of suffering that a trans person has to go through, but I thought it was a great moment where Sam is saying he has to explain himself to people who are probably coming up to him and saying, why are you still alive? How is this possible? And I thought that was just a great moment, and it really cuts through. He had another great line about how, in a big city like New York City, you can find your place. You can kind of, people, just because there are so many people, everybody has to be a bit more accepting of anyone. And I just thought that was a great moment. We haven't seen much of Sam, but I assume he's going to be around for a bit. What did you think?
I found it interesting when essentially I felt like he really put the squeeze on her. He's like, he didn't have to wait around for her.
Right.
I wouldn't have waited around for her. And then he turns it around on her and he's like, well, F you then. I don't give a crap what the deal is with your mom. You're taking me there. I'm going to live in the lap of luxury at the White House.
Good work, Sam.
Yeah. Way to go, Sam. Put the squeeze on her.
I know. Guilt trip. It's I love it.
Now, that also is interesting because they did a very interesting switcheroo there because she agrees to do it. Mm-hmm. And then shortly after that, that's when 355 shows up at her place. So not only is the mom hoping and expecting she'll be there, we think she's the one.
Right.
We think that Hero is going to be found, and instead it's our boy Y.
That is it. Reviewing the episode, I feel confident in giving it an 8. I completely understand what you're talking about. Seeing how the world got to this point by day 63. And thanks a lot, show, for making me really count up Roman numerals.
I had to pause it. I'm like, all right, so
not
that's
Roman
5,
numerals. Sorry,
yeah. The prison wall scratches.
Right, exactly. But I thought this show had some good moments. I wish we had seen the buildup of the crazy mob, but for whatever reason, I feel Nora is going to be our introduction to it. And so, hey, once again, for a show that had such a troubled development, I think the fact that I'm not rolling my eyes at it is a good sign.
All right. Well, we covered the whole show. Now it's time to give out some awards, Bubba.
That's right. We're going to give out 2 awards. Then we're going to toss it to our buddy M Matt Murdick for the musical analysis. Then we'll come back with our final award. And so this first award is one I think everybody loves, Catfish. It's our Whoa Man of the Week. Who you got?
It was a close call.
Close call.
In the end, I would have given it to the woman who shot or traded Yorick if she'd gone through with it. But I had to give it to my girl, 355. She's taking care of business. She's everywhere. She's got her fingers on all parts of the storyline right now. She is the boss. Love her.
Man, I'm going to give my Whoa Man of the Week to the president. Here, Nora was at the gate. She's begging to come in. Have you told her I need to see her? Have you told her I need to see her? What is the president doing? Totally ghosting Nora. I love ghosting people, so for that reason, hope none of the people who've been ghosted are listening to this podcast, but for that reason, I'm giving it to President Brown. You're my Whoa Man of the Week.
I love it. Our next award is the Yorick, I knew him, sorta, award. Ways in which we are like or not like Yorick from this episode. Bubba, who is your Yorick, I knew him sorta award?
Well,
what is your? Yeah.
I'm worried that mine and yours are the same because I'm looking at the show notes and I think we've got the same one. So why don't you go and then I'll explain how mine is just ever so slightly different.
All right. Well, I found 2 this week. One in which I'm like Yorick.
All right, let's hear it.
Obviously, when he was naked and crying in a laundromat. I mean, we've all been there, right?
Oh, definitely. And, normally that's when women look at me.
All right, well, there you go. There you go. All right, so...
I was kidding.
The way that I'm not like Yorick...
Not like Yorick.
I'm not like Yorick in that Beth totally thought that as she described it, oh no, did you make an ironic acquisition of a cat?
Love it.
Which completely describes the kind of complete jerk that Yorick is. But I would never make an ironic acquisition of a cat, nor even an acquisition of a cat. I'm a dog person through and through.
Oh,
Bubba,
man.
what about you?
Alas, I'm not like Yorick this week. Mainly because I don't know how to break into anybody's place. He was breaking into places left and right. He broke into Hero's apartment somehow. I'm like, how is he doing this? And so, the best I've come is when I accidentally locked myself out of my very first car. I did it like 12 times. I left the keys in the car locked. I did learn the coat hanger trick to get in. But otherwise, Yorick is the escape artist and the entry artist that I wish I was. Alas, Yorick, I knew him, sorta.
Wow, you really have aged yourself there. You can't even do that trick anymore.
No, I haven't aged myself so much as I've aged the first car I had, the car that got handed down to me.
All right.
Hey.
Well, now it's time for people's favorite segment, the Double M.
Matt Murdick at Musical Concepts on Twitter, taking a look at the theme for Why the Last Man. Take it, Matt.
So I'm so excited that on September 10th, FX, or the show Twitter, and I suppose everywhere, released the opening sequence because it gave me my first taste of what Stephen Stouter's score is going to be, or her approach might be for The Last Man. I personally thought the sequence was a gas, and I want to get right into talking about Stephen Stouter's approach with the kind of instruments that are used, like the timbre, the melody, the harmony, and the general genre, hey, that's a double G, the general genre feel of the piece itself. If we combine everything, you just listen even to the very beginning, all of these elements coming together really emulate that kind of Western movie genre. Like you've got that kind of pulsing percussion, like the ba-bum, 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 ba-bum. I love that. Not only does that help drive excitement towards the show, but it also is something that you hear a lot in Western genre films where you have this pulse going on. It's not really complex, but it is driving. And then you have this kind of floating melody going on over the top of it. That's very typical of the Western genre. And let's face it, we know from the trailers that most, if not almost all, of the men are going to be dying. And that would create a great deal of chaos, which is not unlike what we picture the Wild West of history to be. So I'm really liking how you can start right at the bottom with the percussion. Kind of has a similar feel to another show the Double P covers, The Mandalorian, where Ludwig definitely put that kind of pulse in because he wanted to emulate the Western genre. So if you can see the similarities there, you'll know what I'm talking about. Then you have other instruments being used, like the acoustic guitar, very bending kind of quality notes that can slide in between pitches, maybe steel or electric guitar. I can't really tell what's doing that right up front, but it all sounds fantastic, and it all reminds you of a Western. Before I get into the melody, there's an interesting thing that happens in the harmony right at the beginning. So let me just play that little bit for you. Now, the piece is in what we musicians call minor. The only thing that you really need to know is that minor tends to sound more serious than major, which is the other type, which tends to make you feel lighter or hope, perhaps. And what happens in the very first two chords is we go from a minor chord to a major chord. So we're told right from the beginning that this world is kind of a dark place. But there is hope as well. We go from the dark place to the major chord of hope. But that hope is kind of faint. And so therefore, the rest of that progression happens in minor. Just thought I'd point that out because in any story, no matter how dark it is, there usually has to be some element of hope. And Steffenstadter has incorporated that in this opening harmony, just to let us know, yes, this is the Wild West. But there's going to be some people who can manage their way through it. When the melody kicks in with that dobro or acoustic, whatever kind of guitar it is, it's amazing. I love it. I love the sound of it. We start to get this kind of repetitive figure that more or less tells us this world is kind of stuck. The shape of it is rather stagnant. That dun, da, dun. Well, it's just easier for me to play it. So the melody doesn't really do too much. However, it does create a sense of tension. And that's why it needs a bridge. It needs some kind of release. And that's why we get this big build-up where all of the orchestra comes in and accompanies what was these acoustic instruments to give it a sense of epicness. And you get a complete different kind of feel for the chord progression. You get a different feel for the harmony. Everything feels bigger and everything feels like it's moving somewhere. This part. If you know Bubba and Catfish, you probably know that they used to cover Game of Thrones. And if you know Game of Thrones, then you know how Ramin's theme during the opening credits kind of shifts to a new part somewhere in the middle of that piece. Voices are added. The melody changes. This is kind of the equivalent of that. Just think of it as what we call a bridge. It's kind of the way to keep you interested, but at the same time work its way back towards the original thought, which is what we end up with in this sequence. That part, that bridge part, ends up getting us right back to essentially the same progression that we had in the beginning. Now, it's bigger, it's a little more intense, it's got a little more complex things going on with it, but it's still essentially these chords. And so there you go. That's essentially the whole sequence. We've heard each part of the sequence. We haven't heard it all strung together, but we've heard each individual part and kind of took a look at its purpose and what it does. I think this is a great kind of Western type theme, and I think that it works perfectly that way as a theme for the concept of this show. There's something about the artistry of Steffenstadter that I also want to address. And that is part of her sound is about imperfection. If you listen to probably her most popular score, the score for HBO's We're Here, you hear all kinds of things, all kinds of little imperfections in those pieces. The cello plays just a little bit out of tune, just enough to drive musicians like me absolutely crazy, drive us mad. But it works because what these little imperfections do, things like accidentally kicking the pedals underneath the piano or having those pedals mic'd so that every time they go up and down you hear them more. These are the kinds of things that Urtis adds to her landscape, which gives everything much more of a human feel. And it's a pretty unique approach as far as film scoring goes. You don't hear a whole lot of film scores doing this. I'll once again use the example of Ramin's Game of Thrones score. All of the musicians are perfectly in tune. They play in perfect time. Everything ends together. But if you listen to the statement of the melody that we talked about, about 4 minutes ago, what you hear is the fact that the acoustic guitar and the slide instrument, the slide dobro or steel guitar or lap steel or electric guitar, whatever it is, what you hear is that they don't play in perfect time together. And of course, this isn't because they couldn't. They could have easily played it just as, quote, perfectly as you would get in a Game of Thrones score. But what Steffenstadter does is she asks musicians to make it imperfect. She asks a cello player to play slightly out of tune, or a trumpet player to play slightly out of tune. She asks the person playing the slide here to play just slightly behind the beat and tells the acoustic player to play right on top of it. And those kinds of imperfections give her music a very human element, probably what we're most used to hearing when we hear live music performed, especially in schools and things. That's the kind of imperfection and humanity that she tries to bring to her music, which I love, because nothing can tell a human story better than imperfection. Why not do it in music too? Those are my thoughts about this opening sequence, and I can't wait to hear more from Erdis Steffensdotter once we get deeper into this series.
Wow.
All right.
Thank you, Matt.
Yeah. Oh, man. Always informational, educational, and entertainational.
Love it. All right, Catfish, suspect of the week. Want to explain to our listeners what this award entails?
Well, this is, I feel like, every week we're going to get clues of who or what may have caused this. And this week, it was a pretty sparse one, but I feel like that this episode is implying that Yorick is the one that somehow caused this with a big magic trick in his desperate attempt to get Beth back. I mean, he might as well be spray painting on the walls. You have no choice now, Beth. You must come back to me.
Oh, poor Yorick. He's clingy, stage 5 clinger.
All right, so, Bubba.
Yeah.
Who is your suspect of the week?
Well, now this is a bit crazy. You do have to know current U.S. politics to understand it.
Okay,
but I think I now know what caused this mass extinction event of all the Y chromosome mammals on Earth.
Oh my God, I'm ready for it. Tell me.
This episode explained it was Mitch McConnell. So Mitch McConnell, if you're not from America or haven't been keeping up, Mitch McConnell is a U.S. senator from what state? The great bluegrass state, Kentucky. Which is home to a lot of coal mines. And sure enough, coal is going the way of the dodo as we move to clean energy sources. And so I hear the president was told, hey, all the power is going to go out soon. And she's like, wait, which power plants? And the person said, all of them. The only thing that can keep coal as a major power supplier of us is if it's the only way. And so Mitch McConnell, R.I.P. Mitch McConnell, you died with all the other Y chromosome people, I assume. But you are the reason why this mass extinction event happened.
Wow, I thought that Mitch McConnell was unkillable. Face like a turtle, lifespan of a cockroach. Unkillable.
Oh, how painful. Listeners, we love getting silly and in talking about this show. Whether you love it, whether you dislike it, anywhere in between, please. We are doing this to interact with you, fans of this fun series. Write to us on social media. Even if, I want to point this out, even if you're listening to this in the future, we are recording this on the week of November 13th, 2021. We know the show isn't even available in other parts of the world for a couple weeks. So if a couple weeks from now, Europe, Asia, South America, if you're getting this show, please reach out to us and tell us how you're feeling about it. You can do that by reaching out on Twitter and Instagram at @PHQ. That's the word double, the single letter P for podcast, HQ for headquarters, at @PHQ, Twitter and Instagram, Facebook.com/PHQ. If you're there on YouTube, please leave a comment. Tell us how we're doing. Tell us what you think of the show. And as we always say, tickle the like button.
And if you're here in America and you're listening to this show before November 13th and you wonder why Bubba said it was the week of November 13th, it's because it's the week of September 13th.
Oh, what the heck is going on? I'm so confused. Yeah, I was thinking about these people who aren't going to get it for a while. I apologize. It's going to take a long time to edit and post this. So.
It's a crazy world out there.
Hey,
all right.
On our next podcast, we're going to be talking about episode 3 entitled Neil. With Jennifer and York reunited, Agent 355 pitches a plan for what's to come next. Plus, the dead president's daughter, Kimberly, circles Jennifer's secret. Meanwhile, Nora Brady and her daughter, Mac, say goodbye to home. Ooh.
Ooh, this is going to be very exciting. Do you think the Neil they refer to in the title is Neil Diamond? What if Neil Diamond was still alive?
Oh man, turn on your heart light.
How much you could trade Neil Diamond for a bag of sequins?
I was about to say, that gives away my age more than... For everybody here at Double P Media, my name's Bubba. You can find me on Twitter at Fit and Trim. That's FITTENTRIM at Fit and Trim on Twitter.
And I'm Catfish. You can hit me up at CJGman67 on Twitter, your 67th favorite CJG man. And we will talk to you next week on Double P Podcast's presentation of
Z, the first podcast you watch after
Why the Last Man.
Yorick. Beth isn't here, okay? Just go home.
You're going to find him in the White House, play acting. He's like, just say your name is Beth. Say your name is Beth. Very toxic.
Very
toxic.